Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Games. This is Daimyo, Rebirth of the Empire, a 1 to 4 player game from Le Boîte de Jeu. In this game, you represent a mighty Daimyo, a leader of a clan with the aim to become emperor of 6 islands. But at the start of the game, you're not so popular. So what are you going to do to become the new cool kid in town? Well, you can send your governors to influence the local people, build farms to harvest resources, scavenge Lara Croft style to dig up ancient relics and dabble in the black market, as well as being wary of assassins that are hiding within the shadows. In this video, we'll go over the solo variant of the game, where you select one of 4 clans to play against the powerful empire through clever use of AI cards. Why solo, you ask? Well, I have no friends, so could learn a bit about popularity here. The game hosts drafting and placing dice, deck building and some engine building mechanics that you'll have to develop wisely in order to gain that popularity. So, will this game be a Daimyo or a Daimyo? Sorry, that's the best I could do. But first, let's look at the components. If you enjoy the video, then feel free to hit the subscribe button. The first thing you notice about the board is that it's big and vivid. Very vivid. Oh, and vibrant. At first appearance, it looks incredibly busy, but once you understand the concept of one area, it becomes very clear. The board is split into 6 islands of different colour, so we have green, purple, yellow, black, blue and red. And these terms are used throughout the game, where I think it would have been cool to use some Japanese names to fit the theme. Now this board is actually double-sided, where this side is used for solo games and 3 or 4 player games, and the other side is used for 2 player games. Also, when playing solo, you ignore these 2 islands on this side of the board. Now each island is divided into a number of areas which are the same for each different coloured island. There is a no man's land where your relic tiles sit, and these can be collected by your scavenger. There is a rough neighbourhood with 3 spaces where your shadow assassins can be placed, and this larger section of each island is the production area that can hold your governors and buildings, and these are associated with a variety of resources where each island actually produces different quantities of them. Lastly, each island has its own influence track, where you'll advance if you place governors or a specific building type, as well as placing shadows and restoring relics. This is the popularity track, and this is the round marker that shows how much popularity you can gain if you are leading on the 4 influence tracks at the end of the round. The game comes with a ton of components. Each player has their own clan board, player pieces of a specific colour that consist of governor, shadow and scavenger meeples, 2 types of buildings that are techno farms and radio towers, and tokens to mark particular areas of the board. Each player starts the game with 3 hero cards specific to their clan, and there's also a separate deck of hero cards that you can purchase during play, and this is where deck building comes into play, and the artwork for these is pretty awesome. You get dice of different colours for taking actions, plus card tokens that represent relic tiles and resources you'll collect during the game. The game components are of fairly decent quality and just as vibrant as the board itself, where the game has great table presence but is a bit of a table eater, so be warned. Setup is relatively simple and doesn't take too long. As well as taking a player board, you'll need to select 2 additional mini construction boards, 1 for each building type. Each mini board has an area where buildings are placed waiting to be built that sit on various bonus action tiles which are unique for each board, so right off the bat you have some variability for each game, and I'll explain how to use the bonus tiles in a bit. Lastly, for solo play, there's a deck of AI cards that are used by the Empire that each show 3 possible actions that they can take. For each game, you'll only use 15 of these cards that are categorised and stacked by game rounds, meaning that the actions on these cards become progressively more powerful as the game progresses. Let's move on to overview of gameplay. The game takes place over 5 rounds that each consist of 3 phases, where all dice are rolled. Players then take turns carrying out actions that culminates in an end of round phase. The aim of the game is to carry out actions to gain influence that later result in you gaining more popularity. At the end of the game, if you have more popularity than the Empire, you win, becoming Emperor. So, how do you get more popularity? Firstly, through the actions you take. Each player board has 5 actions that are intricately linked that require careful selection in order to progress effectively throughout the game. You can recruit governors at a cost of food resources, and when placed on the main board, increases your influence on that island immediately. If you want to construct a building, you'll need to spend different resources and choose your building type. Radio towers also provide immediate influence on that island, but techno farms allow future gain of the resources associated with this space. Speaking of which, Do you need more resources? Then carry out a production action where your techno farms and governors provide a resource associated with its space on the main board. Fancy going on an archaeological dig for relics? Well, the scavenge actions allows you to move your scavenger around the board collecting relics or buying from the black market. Now each relic tile represents just 1/4 of a relic, and gaining 4 different parts of the same colour you can restore it to gain influence, but you need to act quickly to stop the AI empire taking them all. So, can we keep collecting and hoarding relics to beat the AI in restoring them and gaining influence? No, that'll be too easy. The last action, Help from the Villagers, has a storage capacity track that limits the number of these relic tiles that you can hold. But taking this action increases that capacity, allowing you to collect more relics, and also allows you to draw hero cards, become the first player, and select one of 3 special villager tiles from the main board to carry out its bonus ability. What's cool here is when you use the villager tile for an action, you flip it, and this results in a different bonus action being available to you later. So how does influence become popularity? Well, once you and the AI have finished a round, the round marker track tells you how much popularity you both get by being in the lead on each of the 4 influence tracks. At the start of the game, the leader of each track gets some, the loser less. But as the game continues, the popularity reward increases, where you can see the AI steam ahead if you're not too careful. What I've done here is given you a basic overview of each action and how they are linked, showing that in order to do one action, you may need to carry out another action first. However, these actions are also associated with a deeper set of mechanics. For instance, when constructing a building, you'll choose the building type and then a particular building, which reveals a unique bonus action tile. These provide special abilities, effects or resources where you get to choose which action area on your board to place this tile. In a later turn, anytime you take an action with a bonus tile, you can use that ability for free. So here, you place the building dependent on which bonus tile best suits your needs. Sometimes it can be a tough decision because you might need this bonus on your next turn, but it may not be as important in later rounds. Also, when constructing a building, the cost of your next building of that same type increases, and this continues throughout the game. With the recruitment action, instead of purchasing a governor, you can instead buy the services of an assassin shadow. Now, any time you place a governor on the main board, you gain 2 influence even during setup, and some abilities allow you to move these governors around. Placing an assassin allows you to do 2 things. Firstly, you can use some form of super death strike to remove an AI governor from the same island, as well as gaining both influence and income. Therefore, you go up the influence track and the AI moves down. What's more, for each purchase of a unit, you move up a recruitment track that shows the increased cost when taking this action later. When you reach the top of the track, you can use income to move your token right to the bottom of the track, so recruitment is then cheaper for a short while. Therefore, for both recruitment and construction, with each action it becomes more costly, but you do have the option of resetting the cost of units in recruitment but gaining bonus tiles with construction. So, with these various actions, you can clearly see where the intricacies lay, but from what I've mentioned, it still sounds pretty standard, right? Need influence? Recruit a governor. Run out of resources? Produce from your land. Well, it's not that simple, and here's why. The game has you roll 8 coloured dice at the start of each round. To take an action, you need to first select a die of the appropriate colour and place it on one of your player board action spaces of matching colour. We'll ignore the number of the face of the die for the time being, but note that the AI will also be taking dice from this pool, so there's a chance a dice of a particular colour you are depending on has been taken by the Empire. Grrr. So to understand the face value of these dice, we'll first discuss the deck building element of the game. Now, I love deck building, and in this game it works really well. Each clan has a unique set of hero cards that they start the game with. At the end of a round, you can use your income to buy additional cards from the market, but they go straight into your hand rather than discard like they would in traditional deck builders. The Empire also gains hero cards that award it endgame popularity. These cards have special abilities from gaining resources to really powerful effects such as recruiting with no cost or taking free actions. Each card has a strength cost, and if this value can be met by combining 1 or more die from your player board, the ability can be used. This means that when choosing actions, you want to consider the dice face value as well as its colour, because you'll want to make use of hero cards as much as possible, because the bonuses give much more flexibility on your decision making for later turns. For the Empire, its actions are based on the AI cards you draw, where each card has 3 actions, 1 for each colour die. You'll need to read through the card, place a die on one action and carry out the other two. One thing you'll notice is that the Empire will start to rack up influence on every island very quickly by placing loads of governors and buildings and having a massive hoard of relic tiles. To help slow this down, the face value of dice becomes important here too. At the end of the round, the Empire gets a free bonus depending on the sum of all dice it used. That is, unless the value is 13 or higher, where it gets nothing. So the simplest plan here is to use high dice value for the AI, but your more powerful hero cards require higher dice values, plus each clan has an asymmetric ability that can only be used if your own dice values are 13 or higher. You now have a trade-off between dice colour, value and hero card strength against actions and end of round bonuses for the Empire. Unfortunately, this can cause some analysis paralysis where you'll need to decide on how best to gain influence immediately or build your turn for endgame popularity instead. The game has a really great theme that has a small persona of engine building that is somehow able to incorporate a very smart deck building and dice drafting mechanic. I like the deck building, the card abilities are super cool, and the requirement for meeting the card strength with your dice is a very clever part of the game. It does offer high replay value with asymmetric clan abilities and various construction boards, each with different bonus tile setups. During play, you will need to keep track of many concepts, such as which hero cards could be available to use, the order you take your actions based on the remaining dice left in the pool that is dependent on what you leave for the Empire. You'll need to keep track of which actions the Empire will be taking because its AI cards are visible to you during your turn. Some may think there are too many game mechanics rolled into Daimyo, but I think they are moulded together very well and this is very refreshing. The AI plays at 3 difficulty levels, but even at the easiest variant it can be tough to beat. Over time the Empire just swarms the boards with its endless supply of meeples, so you'll need to ensure you are keeping track of any endgame scoring bonuses that you can get. Now the extras. There is an awesome add-on that replaces your meeples and buildings with some fantastically sculptured miniatures. Each clan has its own unique set with a coloured base, and I'll always play with these now, where my favourite has to be the Assassin Shadow, where they look so good on the board. Although I use the minis, I now use the original meeples to track influence and popularity, because why not? So if you're looking for a game that dabbles in area control, deck building, dice drafting and worker placement, then I think you'll really enjoy this as it has a solid solo mode. It can take anywhere up to an hour to finish a solo game, but keeps you fully engaged throughout. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video and the solo variant of the game, and feel free to subscribe to the channel. This is Ninja Geek Games. Sayonara.